Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Hotel News Now podcast. I'm news editor Sean McCracken here with SPR's Jesper Palmqvist. Jesper, how are you doing?
I'm doing good. I'm in the festive spirit. Ho ho! It's great to see the end of the year coming around with all the festivities. Yeah, good to see you.
For sure. And we're going to be publishing this after Christmas, but we're recording it right before Christmas. So if it seems like we're ready to go do something else, like sip on some eggnog, that is why.
Exactly.
So, Jesper, what are the big trends you're seeing out of Asia Pacific for this month?
Well, it definitely closed the way we anticipated, with maybe the one difference that I would have looked back on previous years. I would have seen more of a flurry of activity in the last few weeks, but I think a lot of people had already had that done. I think looking back on the last decade and looking beyond the pandemic, we definitely used to see the last couple of weeks, a lot of things happening and the request for data and what people actually analyze and ask us about. It feels like this year that was done a little bit earlier. So I feel that the December rolled on then with the first 2 to 3 weeks up until now with the similar trends as before, normalizing those trends that had started to bring down in the Q4 and bringing in what we talked about earlier in terms of performance around the region as well. I mean, there's a couple of headlines that come in, right? Either political that we can get into and other things, but generally more of the same as how the year ended, which is not a bad thing. Q4 did show some of that stability and less of the spikes in either direction, I suppose.
So from a market perspective, you're saying it's the same we've been seeing? So the strong markets continue to be strong and the struggling markets continue to struggle?
Yeah, pretty much so. I mean, it's the fact that we talk about we're starting at the lower end, like markets like New Zealand and things that were hoping to turn a page and start their journey up, and obviously now in summer season, it looks that way. China is still we're waiting. We've obviously seen the what the authorities and what the government wants to do and want to achieve in 25 in terms of monetary easing and making sure that people spending in the year once the Lunar New Year comes to a close in a month from now, what the next year will offer. So there's indications that will resolve it, the imminent issues of people not spending, and also the in terms of the housing and that. So there's indications that is still what we're hoping, but meanwhile the rates are still in China much lower than we would have expected X amount of months ago. So we're still waiting for a turnaround there. Otherwise, around the rest of the countries, it's the same. Vietnam continuing its journey back. Malaysia proving rates higher than they've probably ever seen. And you got these markets that we talked about, the stable within certain parameters, just putting in things in buckets here. But Australia, Singapore, Thailand, Maldives performing as people expect generally. And then you have those markets where things are doing better than expected and really still driving. So that's your Japan, India, Indonesia, and Korea as well, where we continue to see some good performance for sure, even towards the end of the year.
So, I mean, since we bring up Korea, obviously South Korea drew a lot of big international headlines with the turmoil around the martial law declaration and the fallout from that. Obviously, South Korea seems to be one of the more stable, at least politically, socioeconomically, markets in the region. Do you foresee this being kind of a destabilizing thing, or do you think South Korea will continue to perform in the way that it always has?
I think there's two answers to that in a way, because the first thing you say I would maybe disagree with, that the stability of Korea with its socio and political. Korea is still a young nation, both in terms of becoming a developing nation. If you look at it economically and politically stable, go from the Olympics 30 years ago and onwards. I think it's also proven that with the political turmoil that happens, just like in Thailand and other countries, that doesn't impact to the same degree when it's domestic, right? What impacts
Yeah.
Korea, obviously, is what we saw about China and more geopolitical things, where the U.S. and China's relationship to Korea, that has a severe impact. Right now, Korea, and this year has been, in particular the last 6 months, have been riding off that positive wave where things have been okay, where domestic travel in Korea has been good. Japanese have been the few Japanese that travel outside Japan for currency exchange rates. They've been going to Korea, and obviously a lot of Chinese have been going to Korea. It's been working really well, and leading into Christmas as well. With the first snow, it was more before the political challenges that happened in Korea. Was that you had early snowfall that gridlocked Seoul for a while, and you had a lot of tourists coming to take these magical pictures, renting the hanbok. So tourism in that sense has been fine. Hotels have been performing the same way in the main markets in Korea in the last month. We haven't seen a change in that. And I think that's quite telling, that we don't usually see that super quick turnaround unless it is for a geopolitical issue that really matters. And that's not the case right now.
So, obviously we're at the end of the year now. The natural thing is to look back at the totality of 2024. What do you make of the year that was? Obviously, we got a little bit of time left in the year, but what's your first blush impressions of how 2024 went?
Yeah, I think the overall headline that it was a good year. And I think when we finally could compare with the year prior, also in Asia Pacific as the last part of the world, when you do that without saying any annus horribilis before that, or even 2019, it's nice to say that, hey, year over year, we're seeing some good growth. And across, one of the biggest topics this year was definitely resource markets. When will the Chinese return? What does that mean? And when we talked about the group to FIT travel, and also a lot of things now towards the end of the year being written about Chinese coming back into Australia. They're still behind historic numbers, but it's 85% flight capacity. But also hoping, I suppose one of those things that I'm hoping is a trend into 25 is around visa deregulations, because all this talk about nationalism and borders and tariffs and whatnot, I think what China and other countries are doing is trying to make sure that in this new world, it's easier to travel. So we know the latest news from China was, how do you used to be able to do a 48-hour or 96-hour transitional visa without a visa, and now it's 10 days, it's 240 hours. So you don't need hours anymore. It's basically a 10-day travel within China in multiple provinces to travel around without a visa and then travel onwards. That is a huge shift. And China now has full mutual exemption with 25 countries, unilateral with 38 countries, and that transit visa is over 50 countries. And inbound, even though that number I keep saying is smaller, it's over 30 million this year. And a lot of countries would be happy with 30 million. Now, this is China, so it's much bigger. So inbound and outbound, a lot of things happening there, and how the source markets, a lot of those resorts around Asia Pacific, where Americans travel to and Europeans and intra-ASEAN, they see a slightly different source market pattern than they had historically. And that was the shift for this year. So I think that's on source market. The other thing is, of course, the deals came back. We started seeing single asset transactions and some groups, hotel groups and other asset classes being transacted. Not just in Japan. Second half of the year, we also saw it elsewhere, which is activity as the gap between buyers and sellers was different. Also saw an increase in white label, obviously coming out of Australia mostly, and seeing how that impacts in 25, the owners' options and choices in terms of brands, and if it changes flags and the models itself around as franchise keeps growing and being popular around the region. And the other part is around IPOs. India had such an active year, a couple of years now of IPOs, and probably towards the end of that now, and rather the opposite in China, where you had delistings, right? You look at someone like Fosun, the owner of Club Med, going towards asset light and delisting on the Hong Kong exchange. So also financial activity as well, I would say.
Yeah. So when we have this conversation a year from now, what do you think your answer is going to be about 2025? What's going to be the big trend from the year that's about to be?
Yeah, so some of the main bullet points moving forward. I think we're not going to have to talk about too much around variations in source markets because the flight schedules are obviously being more set, so that's kind of fine. So people have what they have. I think costs is going to continue to be a big conversation as the revenue growth has slowed down in the last 6 months and 3 months around many markets. That revenue growth and ADR growth that we've seen, that's going to slow down even in those big ones, the Japan, India, and Indonesia. And then it's a pure cost basis to see how does that work for owners and operators and brands around the region. Can they make sure that those efficiencies that are in place, that costs? I think number one is definitely the cost basis and the profitability, how flow through goes through Asia Pacific and across also those mid-range markets, not the top performing or the ones really catching up. I think we'll see more deals as well outside Japan and everywhere. We might see some more deals happening in China and also around Southeast Asia. It could be single assets that will continue to trade hands. Definitely foresee that. I think 25 that's an ongoing trend. And just normalizing the spikes in the diversity of performance that we're seeing now, that we'll see a little bit more neutral. So it'll be, I say hopefully, but I think a lot of people want a year where it's easier to forecast what's coming next quarter. So that's what I mean. I think that's most likely, especially the second half of the year, barring any unforeseen events, that we'll see more of that, especially if the geopolitical situations doesn't impact too much. So moderate growth and managing the cost is probably what I think.
So we'll close this out, as we always do, with a quick discussion about footy, but there's no real actual news to discuss right now. So here's what I'll do, Jesper. What are your expectations for the 2025 AFL season about 3 months out from it actually starting?
Yeah, it's great. This is the one time, if you make a prediction now, you're early in, right? This is pre-fantasies, pre-anything else, right?
You're planting your flag, yeah.
Exactly. I think it's easy then to go and say Lions and those teams who did so well last year and the teams. I think it's finding teams that are maybe coming up, and maybe there's a point for St. Kilda coming back up and doing something for real. I still think Swans have a great team. They've proven that this year. Definitely should be able to be in the top 4 on the ladder when that comes around. And I just hope there's some kind of it would be great with another grand final, but no more heartbreaks, please. But I still think Swans got a great shot for next year, don't you?
Well, I sure hope so. Obviously, coaching changes. You never know how that will work out. Sometimes it's the best thing that ever happened, and sometimes it's the worst. So let's hope for the best.
Absolutely right.
All right. Well, Jesper, I'll let you get back to enjoying holiday festivities. Thanks so much for I don't think we've been doing this for the full year, but for most of the year, enjoying these conversations with you.
We did indeed, and it's a pleasure. And hopefully, if people want us to talk about other things, they can let us know in the comments, of course.
All right.
Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you.
Hi, I'm Davon Reed.
I'm Omari Head.
And I'm Chris Henry.
We're the hosts of the Next Gen and Lodging podcast on the Hotel News Now podcast network. It's a monthly show in which we interview a new generation of hoteliers to get their insights into a variety of disciplines and topics, from finance to food and beverage and hotel operations. Listen to us on Spotify, Google, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
This episode of the Hotel News Now podcast was recorded on December 23rd, 2024, and edited by me, Sean McCracken. If you want more hotel news, visit our website at hotelnewsnow.com, and don't forget to rate and review us on your podcast platform of choice. Thanks for listening.